Welcome to Icons in the Making. I'm your host, Heather Stern, CMO at Lippincott, the creative consultancy behind some of the world's best brands. Join me as I sit down with the leaders of today's most influential brands. You'll hear stories of transformation and walk away with a new perspective on what it means to be an icon. This is Icons in the Making. At a time when people are yearning for real connection, the power of online community has never been more important. Just ask the 50 million loyalists who engage on the online network Reddit every single day. With over 100,000 thriving online communities and an impending IPO, it's no surprise that brands are taking interest in the platform. In fact, Reddit is on track to hit $1 billion in revenue by next year. To help us understand the power of the Reddit platform and what it reveals about where people turn to for the source of truth is Roxy Young, Reddit's CMO. A trailblazer throughout her career, Roxy has perfected the art of using the power of brand to connect people in retail, entertainment, and now tech. And there's lots that we want to cover today. So with that, I will just welcome you. Hi, Roxy.
Hello. How are you today?
I am good, and I'm really excited because I feel like since I knew this was coming up, Reddit is now like everywhere that I look. And in fact, I was trying to figure out, I was going to a concert, and the only place I could actually understand who was going to go on and when was Reddit. There's just like this thriving sense of, just people in the know. And, what's really interesting about Reddit, it's a brand, but it's really a community of communities. So I just would love to start with, what do people love about the Reddit experience?
Yeah. For those people who maybe aren't as familiar with Reddit, I'd love to share a little bit more about who we are. As you mentioned, we are a community of communities, where people can dive into anything that they're interested in, whether it be plants or parenting or fitness or football. There is a community for everyone on Reddit. And that is our mission, to bring community, belonging, and empowerment to everyone in the world. And, I think what I love most about it, and what I think is so appealing at its core, is that we're fulfilling this human need that everybody has. Everyone needs to feel like they belong somewhere, and sometimes you just don't have access to that in your close physical proximity. And especially over the last few years, as we've all been sheltering in place and trying to stay safe in the midst of a global pandemic, you can find that connection and that community on Reddit. And you can find your people, as we have just shared in our most recent campaign, people that are interested in the same things you are. And I think that's what makes it really special.
I mean, it does feel like, in a way, it's not a social media platform. It's not just, a source of static information. What is it really that makes it just the place that people turn to?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I observed when I first got to Reddit, and this was back in 2017, and I was developing my thoughts and opinions on the role of marketing at a community-centric, user-generated community of communities platform. And one of the things that I wrote down, and I look at this every day, is, Reddit is not ours. It's theirs. Reddit belongs to the community. And so while I know we oftentimes get categorized as social media, because broadly social media is equated to any place where users are generating their content, and that then, becomes the way in which, people engage. What's unique about Reddit is that it belongs to the community. People start and create communities because they're passionate about something and they want to share that with other people. And so we aren't dictating what comes on to Reddit. People are creating communities. People are contributing in communities, and people are voting on content that is contributed in communities. And so it's a very people-powered place that truly belongs to the community.
Any interesting kind of tidbits or trends that, you're seeing? I know it changes every day, but kind of what's been particularly hot?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of things that we've seen over the last few years, and we take a look at this every day. We're constantly analyzing and evaluating what people are talking about on our platform. One of the interesting things that I've been observing is just how a sport like Formula One has been emerging and growing and becoming, one of the most popular sport related topics on Reddit. It could potentially be fueled by the Netflix show and maybe just more global interest. And it could also be that, maybe it was, one of the sports that was actually taking place during the pandemic. We also saw during the pandemic, people coming to our community around unemployment, r/unemployment, and trying to piece together all the information that they needed to make sure that they were able to get by at a time when it was just incredibly confusing. And so there's in any given week there's all kinds of things that are emerging on Reddit, and it's really fun to analyze and evaluate and see what people are talking about.
Yeah. Well, one of the things about kind of being at the helm of a brand like this is, as you said, it's very interesting. It doesn't, in a way, belong to you, right? That was one of your first insights. So let's go back. I really was fascinated by this and thoroughly impressed. So February 2021, hot off a stock market frenzy spurred by a Reddit group, you decided to seize the moment and debut a 5-second ad at the Super Bowl in under 1 week. Part of the ad stated, "Big spots are expensive, so we couldn't buy a full one, but we were inspired and decided to spend our entire marketing budget on 5 seconds of airtime." That is bold. That is pretty amazing. I remember it getting just a lot of conversation across the industry. Tell me about what that time was like, what the reaction was like, and kind of the impact that you think that move had.
Yes, definitely. I love this question, and I love going back to this moment in time in early 2021. It was probably one of the most fun and exhilarating times in my entire career, and now that I have had the benefit of hindsight, I can break this moment down into 3 components, and those 3 components are passion, purpose, and empower. And let me talk a little bit more about each of those. On the point around passion, Reddit is filled with passionate communities, and in early 2021, we were seeing the power of these Reddit communities having real world impact. And there was a community called Wall Street Bets, and they get together, and much like an investment group that maybe you're a part of. People are on Reddit and they're making high stakes stock trades, and they were coming together and they were taking action, and they were buying certain stocks. And as a result, the price of certain stocks was going up, and everyone was talking about the impact that this Reddit community was having on the stock market. And, I knew that it was something significant when my 76-year-old mother texted me and said, what is happening? And so at the root there was passionate people coming together around something that they're interested in on Reddit. And as it relates to purpose, in that moment, as the chief storyteller for Reddit, I reflected, and I knew that we had to use that moment as a springboard to share more about who we are and the value that we provide. And so on Friday, January 28th, we reached out to our fantastic agency partners, RGA, and we said, let's regroup. on Monday, and Monday was February the 1st. And let's try to unpack what's happening, and let's think about what's the best response for us as a brand. And in that meeting on Monday morning, we talked about a lot of different ideas, ways in which we could show up and reinforce how people were coming together and the power of communities on Reddit. And we talked about a few different things. Should we take out a full page ad in the New York Times or the Washington Post and, share a little bit more? But the idea that we all really loved was this idea of a 5-second Super Bowl ad where we had a very purposeful message. And it was this 10-sentence manifesto, just, about the power of the collective and the power of the community coming together. And speaking of power, in just 3 business days, we wrote the copy, we developed the creative, we bought the media, and we turned the ad into the network on Thursday, and then the ad ran on Super Bowl Sunday, which was February the 7th. And in that moment, we knew that it was a really powerful message, and it was resonating. And you highlighted a couple of sentences there, but in total, the ad was 10 sentences. It was a static image. We knew that during COVID, people were sitting around in their homes and not out at bars, and people use, DVRs, and they pause and they replay. And so, I think we just had a really interesting set of circumstances, and we were able to come together and bring the story around passionate communities with a very purposeful message that had, a significant impact. And in terms of the impact that it had that night, it was the second most searched ad on Google. I think people were trying to figure out, what was this ad all about? It flashed on my screen for 5 seconds. 64% of the people who became aware of Reddit was because of that ad. Like after the ad ran, we executed a brand tracker, and we said, "Hey, do you know about Reddit?" And 64% of people said, "I do now because of the ad that you ran." Our brand perception increased by 20%, and our advertiser registration, so people coming to Reddit to try and reach and connect with our passionate communities, went up significantly by about 70%. And so it was a great moment where we were able to tell the story of our passionate communities.
Oh my gosh. It's a bold and brave move, and one that clearly paid off. I love hearing those stories. Just for a moment, like, were you at home just watching and waiting for it to come on? Did you have a moment where you were like, we did this, and this is going to happen, and then afterwards, I just give me a little bit more, because it's so exhilarating.
Yes. We all came together, Reddit's internal team and RGA's team that worked on the campaign. And on Super Bowl Sunday, we were all in a Slack room and in a Zoom room. And the way that we bought the ad was actually really interesting. It was too late, for a national buy. We couldn't afford a national buy, so we bought regionally. And because we bought the ad regionally, it didn't run all at the same time. So it ran in different markets at different times. And that was a fantastic byproduct of, us, of the way in which we executed this, because we termed it the popcorn effect. So it first went out in Philadelphia right after the Star Spangled Banner. And as soon as we saw a tweet that said, "Oh my God, I think Reddit just hacked the Super Bowl," we knew that we were in for a really fun evening. And we still had all of the other markets that we purchased were going to kind of go off, and the popcorn was going to start popping, and people were going to start talking about it. And so, yes, I was at home. I was in a Zoom room. I was in a Slack room. And it was probably one of the most fun 2 hours of my career.
Well, yeah, I was just going to, say that exact thing. I think, often people will say, we're not It's not brain surgery. We're not, it's curing cancer. But I will say there is, in the midst of just trying to grapple with so much change and what is going on in the world and the economy and the industry and what do consumers want, sometimes we forget about the fun and almost like irreverent moments that can be created. And so, again, bravo to you and the team. Speaking of fun, you've described Reddit's brand character as candid, eclectic, self-aware, and brilliantly absurd. How does that get woven into how your brand shows up in the world, and how does that impact the kinds of advertisers that you work with?
Yes. I've been very lucky to have worked on many iconic brands throughout my career. But when I came to work at Reddit, one of the most fun things that we did was we sat down as a team and we developed the key elements of our brand book, and this included our brand traits. And at that time, Reddit had a very early version of a brand book, but we really wanted to build it out. Who are we? What do we sound like when you see and engage with our brand? And so through looking at a lot of historical work that Reddit had done and the things that were really resonating, we developed 4 brand traits, as you noted. We're self-aware, we're candid, we're eclectic, and we're brilliantly absurd. And the way that this comes to life is when we write a campaign brief, we are using these traits as a filter to guide how we are developing our creative. And so a few examples are in 2020, it was a big election year for the United States. And so we opted to run a campaign called Up the Vote. People are voting and they're upvoting and downvoting on Reddit. And so we were able to tie voting on Reddit to voting in the real world. And we found the most brilliantly absurd posts on Reddit, and we brought them to life in our campaign creative. And we basically said, if you can vote on Reddit, you can vote in the real world. And so some examples of what that looked like was there was a stake, and it was kind of shaped like the outline of the continental United States. And someone had posted it on Reddit. It had garnered all of these votes. And so we put that out in our creative, and we said, if you can vote for the United Stake of America on Reddit, you can vote in the real world. Up the vote. And so it's just an example of how we're bringing that brilliantly absurd brand trait to life. And one additional example that was very fun is last year we ran a program called Reddit Recap in partnership with our product team. And we gave people this personalized recap of their year on Reddit. And people get these from time to time on Spotify and other places. And so we were trying to identify how can we make this uniquely Reddit. And one of the things that we did is we told people how many banana links they scrolled on Reddit throughout the year. And, a common meme on Reddit is banana for scale. So people will say, here's, this, whatever it might be. Maybe it's an insect or I don't know, something that they found in their, in their house. And then they'll say banana for scale, and they'll put a banana, and a banana is kind of acting like the ruler. And so when we rolled out the Reddit recap, we told people, here's how many banana links that you scrolled Reddit last year. And it went viral. Like everyone was posting and comparing how many banana links they scrolled on Reddit. And I think lastly, the Super Bowl ad was just an example of us being very, very candid and self-aware. We created this manifesto highlighting the power of our community. And so those are just a few of the ways in which we're trying to use those brand traits to guide our creative and how we look and how we sound when we come to life as a brand. And you mentioned, how does this impact advertisers? And so while these are our brand traits and these are, the things that are unique to Reddit, there is a home for every brand on or advertiser on Reddit. And we work with both large and small advertisers around the world. And just because these are Reddit's brand traits, it doesn't mean that they have to be the traits of, people who want to engage with our communities on Reddit. And so we help them make sure that they're bringing their brand to life in the right way. And we tend to focus on the 4 C's: contributing in an authentic way, really thinking about your creative and how it is appropriate for Reddit's community environment, not being afraid to co-create with the community, and also just helping them conform to some of the norms, some of the language and vernacular that they see on Reddit.
I love that. And just, thinking through that set of attributes, that voice, that character, and how it is carried through. I'm curious, just as a follow-up, the experience, the actual experience on the site is very distinct, and there's a simplicity almost about it, and interactions that only you are known for. How do you think about the work that you're doing influencing the evolution of the experience that we're seeing? Are you partnering with the product team? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think one of the things that the marketing team can do is we can bring the customer to life. And when we bring the customer to life, and when we share insights about the role that Reddit is playing, it is helpful because it will basically frame up for our product team what they need to think about in terms of creating new features and creating new experiences for our customers. Something that we did earlier this year is we segmented some of our largest markets, and we broke down the types of customers that we have the potential to go after. And it was very illuminating. We were able to create personas around these audiences, and it was incredibly helpful. Our product team was able to say, wow, we're meeting the needs of this customer, but there's still more that we can do to satisfy this customer, and it's a large opportunity. And so I think bringing the customer to life and bringing them to life in a way that can help our teams that are developing products make better decisions is how we're going to continue to make Reddit a great destination for millions of people around the world.
That's awesome. Going back to the idea that it's such a unique brand, how do you determine the right balance between the kind of curated identity and experience and then co-creating that with your customers, with your users, with your communities? What does that look like, and how do you know when it's goes too far, or when you need to, assert on, as like the head of the brand?
I think we want brands to be authentic when they come to Reddit. One of the things that we often say is Reddit is the most human place on the internet. And so if you think about Reddit in that way, and if you're a brand and you want to connect with our passionate and amazing communities, you have to be mindful of the environment, and we want you to contribute and have honest conversations. We talked about the 4 C's: contributing, thinking about your creative, co-creating, and trying to conform to some of the norms. And one of the best examples, or one of my most favorite examples of a brand coming on to Reddit and really being themselves and co-creating was a direct-to-consumer bidet company called Tushy. And the brand recognized that early on in the pandemic, that one of the things that consumers were very concerned about was maybe not being able to find toilet paper. It was a real concern. And so they said, we would love to engage on Reddit. We've got a product that we think can meet people's needs, especially in this moment. And so they reached out and said, hey, we would love for you, the community of Reddit, to help us name a new product that we're getting ready to launch. And so one of the things that a brand can do on Reddit when they choose to engage with our communities, they can invite them into the conversation. And this is what people love to do on Reddit. And so when they did this, what happened is they got, thousands of real and authentic comments in response to their request to help name the product. And so I think that the Reddit community proudly named the product the Ass Blaster 9000.
Sweet.
And so, and I think it's just, a great example of a brand being very true to who they are, tapping into the Reddit community, using all of those best practices, contributing, co-creating, and really thinking about, their creative. And not every brand, is going to be a bidet company that, is willing to be, very, very humorous. And so on the other end of the spectrum, a brand like Volvo, and safety is at the core of what they offer. And so they came to Reddit and they gathered stories from people on Reddit about car accidents and the role of safety features and maybe saving people's lives. And so they shared something that they were doing to improve the safety of each of their cars, wanted our community to share their stories about the role and importance of safety features, and just saw, thousands and thousands of stories and people sharing, their deeply personal stories as it relates to cars and safety, which is very aligned with, their brand and how they want to resonate with consumers.
And what's amazing is that in both of those examples, as kind of opposite as they are, Reddit stayed true to itself and its community, and what came out at the other end was meaningful for both of those brands. You've clearly have made quite an impact in just understanding that the brand has kind of got so much momentum. What are your ambitions for the future of Reddit?
Yeah, I've had an amazing 5 years at Reddit, and as we've discussed, have done some of the most fun things that I've worked on in my career. And as I think about the future for Reddit, there's a couple of things that are top of mind for me. I think first and foremost, we need to help people understand the breadth of communities on Reddit. Reddit has over 100,000 communities. There is a home for everyone on Reddit, whether it's pets, whether it's parenting, whether it's plants, whether it's cars or cartoons. There is a community for you on Reddit, and you can find your people. And whenever we are developing a new program, we're thinking about how can we use this as an opportunity to showcase the breadth of communities on Reddit. One example is we recently sponsored Love Island, which is one of the most popular reality television shows in the UK. 5 million people are tuning in, and we said, we want to work with you. We want to be your official fan community where all of the behind the scenes, you can share it with the Reddit community, all of the after show discussions and during the show discussions are going to be on Reddit. And so through this program, we were able to double the number of people who were participating in this community. And maybe people didn't think about Reddit as a place and a home for reality TV fandoms, but now they are. And so that's definitely something that's top of mind for us as we think about the future. I think the second thing that I spend a lot of my time thinking about is extending our brand around the world. Reddit has been around for 17 years, and it belongs to the community, and people are setting up communities all over the world. But as we start to market around the world, just figuring out how we develop our brand and make sure that it's resonating in new markets is something that we're spending a lot of time thinking about. We talked about these 4 brand traits of being candid and self-aware and eclectic and brilliantly absurd, and that can be nuanced. And so as we continue to grow and expand our audience around the world, we need to make sure that the spirit of that is alive, but it's executed in a way that is culturally relevant and meaningful. And so, I think those are a couple of the things that we're thinking about on a daily basis, is just making sure people know that there's a home for them on Reddit, huge breadth of communities, and making sure that we're relevant as we continue to grow and expand globally and are bringing our brand to life in a way in which, it's meaningful.
So over your career, you've worked with some amazing brands, many of which become, case studies on, how to understand who you're reaching and do so in an exciting and fresh way. Sephora, Gap, Netflix. Are there lessons that you've taken from those experiences that kind of you carry forward in what you're doing today?
As I look back, what I can say that I've observed, and maybe hindsight and wisdom throughout the years, is that the fundamentals of marketing, no matter what industry you're in or what the product is, the fundamentals are still the same. You need to understand who your target customer is. You need to know how you are solving their problems and delivering value back to them. You need to be cognizant of how you want your brand to be viewed and the characteristics that you want people to associate with it. We've talked a lot about, Reddit having this very distinct set of traits. And if a brand were a person, Reddit is this brilliantly absurd, candid, eclectic person. And that's not appropriate for every brand. And so you need to think about, what are the characteristics that you want people to associate with your brand? And then how do you bring that to life visually? And I've been in the industry for over 20 years. And I do think that there was a period of time where, this term growth hacker emerged, and the internet was new and nascent in this uncharted territory that had all this opportunity. And, I think for a little while, I think, some people, myself included, maybe lost sight of some of those fundamentals. And so I think a key lesson that I've learned is that even if you can hack for short-term gains, it's not a replacement for a really strong foundation that's rooted on some of the things that I just mentioned. Really having a clear sense of who your customer is, how you're solving their problems and meeting their needs, and then how you want your brand to show up in the world.
Building on what you just said with regards to the fundamentals, what do you think, today's modern marketer, what are the attributes that embody him or her? What's most important now?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think about this question every day, and I'm constantly reflecting on my own skill set and how it is had to evolve, and the profile of people who I'm hiring now versus 10 or 15 years ago, how that has evolved. And I truly believe that marketing is one of the most dynamic functions in business, because it's moving at the speed of consumers and cultural change, and new things are emerging all of the time. And some of the attributes that I think are essential for today's modern marketer are curiosity, being deeply curious about people and their habits and their behaviors and how they're evolving. This function is changing so rapidly, and channels that I use now didn't even exist 20 years ago. And so being on the forefront and being just intellectually curious about people is at the top of the list. I think the second thing is communication. Marketers are in the business of persuading, and to do this, we need to be effective. We need to be effective communicators internally and externally. And this is a critical skill for the modern marketer. The third thing is marketers are connectors. We are bringing the customer to life. And, I shared a couple examples of how we've been doing that at Reddit. But as we bring customers to life, we need to extend these connections into other parts of the business so that everybody has the customer front and center in their roles, whether it's a product role or a design role or a business development role. Being that connector and bringing that customer to life is going to have a huge impact on everybody being able to move in the same direction. And then I think the last characteristic is calculated. We have more access to data than we've ever had before, and we can be very calculated about the programs that we want to put in place and what the expected impact will be. And I think that has become an expectation. As I think about the modern marketer, curiosity, communication, being a connector, and using data and information to make calculated business decisions are a few of the key characteristics that I think about.
Well, what I love is that you didn't say digital or transformation or, these things that I think obviously are critically important as channels. And as just being adaptable and evolving, but things that are just in a way fundamental, which is a lot of what you've been talking about. Well, I'm very excited to see, what you do next and what happens, over the next few years with this incredible community. But I do want to end the conversation with a question that I ask everyone who comes on the show. Who is your icon?
Oh my goodness. There's so many people that I admire, and so I'd love to answer this on a couple different dimensions. When I think about being a marketer, as someone who's been doing this for a really long time, I do keep examples of great marketing, and I have definitely found a pattern, and one of the patterns is that the person who is at the helm of formerly Burger King and currently Activision Blizzard, the CMO there, his name is Fernando Machado, and so maybe he's listening. I have had the pleasure of meeting him, but he's definitely been a marketing icon in terms of some of the really groundbreaking things that he's brought to life as a marketer, very bold and innovative. And then secondly, on a personal level, I think some of my icons are women who have helped pave the way and succeeded maybe against the odds. And so I think in that list, you can include people like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Hillary Clinton, Madeleine Albright. And so hopefully those are a few of the icons that are on my list.
Well, I love looking at it from both perspectives, and I will say you're absolutely right up there with the other icons. So thank you so much, Roxy, for your time and your insights and the stories, right? This is a business where we got to be able to tell stories that connect with people, and so many great insights today. So really appreciate it and can't wait to connect again.
Thank you so much, Heather. I really appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on the show.
Thanks for tuning in. If you liked what you heard, share with your colleagues and friends, and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And if you're feeling really generous, leave us a 5-star rating. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.